worst SEC record South Carolina has ever had was 2019 when the Gamecocks went 8-22 in Mark Kingston's second year. You're looking to avoid that. You're 5-22 right now. You would need to sweep LSU just to tie the record. So either way, you're going to be tied for the worst program record. Or, more likely than not, you lose one game this weekend, and now you'll have the most losses in a season in program history in conference play. The other thing is, in SEC terms, I thought Missouri was going to lose a game or so, or probably get swept at Texas A&M.
That did not happen.
And that did not happen. They swept A&M, and I think that is the upset of the year, without a doubt. But in terms of that, we were thinking, all right, Missouri has 24 losses. They're 0-24 coming into the weekend. They just need one more loss to become the first team in SEC history to lose 25 games in conference play. That hasn't happened yet. South Carolina could potentially be the first to do it now, which is very hard to say. So if LSU sweeps South Carolina this weekend, you're seeing South Carolina lose 25 games in conference play. And at that point, I think it's very hard to defend what you do moving forward, because that is just, that's rock bottom, if anything, right there. That is about as low as you can get in terms of what this baseball program used to be versus what it is now.
Yeah, and not in a figurative sense, in a literal sense. That'd be the worst possible ever. All right, flipping it over. Take a deep breath. Woo-sa. There were some positives this weekend for the softball team. The softball team was able to secure a top 8 national seed, which means a lot for them moving forward into the tournament, right?
Yeah, this is a very big deal for the softball program. The difference between being a top 8 seed and being like UCLA, being the 9 seed, is huge, because now you get to play not just a regional at home, but you're playing a super regional at home too, and that is a huge deal. Like, being at home is massive. And if you are South Carolina, you're going to a super, and then you play UCLA potentially in the next round, they're having to come all the way to Columbia. I mean, that is a long trip, as you know, Preston, and that's something that cannot be understated. But yeah, the fact that they got a top 8 seed over teams just like UCLA, over LSU, there had been people out there, on Gamecock Central, Wes Mitchell had written a story yesterday that it didn't seem likely that they were going to get a top 8 seed, but when the bracket was revealed and they got that top 8 seed, I think there's a lot of relief just in the fact that you don't have to leave home. You get to play a regional here, and then you get to play a super here if you get there. And that makes it so much easier to get to Oklahoma City for the Women's College World Series compared to if you started out here for the regional and then you had to go on the road somewhere. That'd be a lot tougher.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about the travel for UCLA. The Carolina's regional will be Virginia, North Florida, which Bill and I keep talking about this idea. Like, North Florida's been popping up on our schedule way more than we would like to this year. Obviously, throwing the death blow to the basketball season early this year. And then also Elon is on that. And the Gamecocks will play Elon on Friday night at 5:30. So there's a chance for you folks to go out there. And I've said it before. I said it on our show. I'll say it again. If you haven't maybe been as involved in softball, or you haven't seen what softball, 1, get involved. The team is very good. But 2, it's also a really fun sport to watch as a casual. If you don't know really what's happening, the action is so fast-paced and things are going on all the time that it's a really fun sport to watch as a casual fan. Would you agree, Jack?
Oh, absolutely. It is such a fun sport in that it only takes about 2 hours of your time, and the team's good. Like, they have not been very good in the last, probably since the last time they went to the Super Regional, which is 2018. And yes, this is their 3rd straight trip to the postseason, but you have to remember, Preston, I mean, there have been some dark times with South Carolina softball. You go back to 2020 to probably 2022. I mean, this team was at the bottom of the SEC, winning 3-4 conference games. I mean, we're talking what baseball's doing right now. That's very, very tough. And you had to move on from Beverly Smith, who has been here for a long time, but you bring in Ashley Chastain Woodard, and what she's done in year 1 is honestly insane. I mean, going from being picked at the bottom of the SEC standings, picked 16th, and then they are going to be one of 7 of the top 8 teams out of the SEC to host host as a national seed. That's crazy to think about, and it's remarkable what she's done in year 1. And I mean, look, if you're thinking about going to baseball or softball this weekend, and you don't want to do both, I would just go to softball. I mean, why not go out there and support a team that is on the verge of improving and making some really cool history potentially.
Absolutely. I agree with that. All right. So, Jack, when we come back, we're going to talk about this SEC schedule. I am not a schedule geek, but I'm interested in learning what this means if we're going to play more SEC games. Is that good for the conference? Is that good for the teams? Is that good for us as South Carolina fans? This is the Extra Point. Welcome into the Extra Point. Preston Thorne filling in for Tyler Head. We still got our guy Jack Veltri in there, so we're going to lean on Jack pretty extensively during this conversation because I'm going to be honest, Jack, I don't necessarily get into schedule talk until the schedule's released. When like the NFL is going to release their schedules on Wednesday, I'll be there for that. But the conversation, if you remember maybe 2 years ago, and they were talking about the different pods and all these, I kind of tune all that out. So leaning on you, Jack, the SEC is talking about going to a 9-game scheduling point. What does that mean for me, run-of-the-mill South Carolina fan?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't blame you, number one, for not wanting to get too involved in looking at the schedules and stuff, because honestly, man, it will tire you out. But, I think this has been such a discussion point for what feels like years now at this point, ever since, as you mentioned, the pod system came out a few years ago. And this has been a talking point for a while now. And number one, if you move to 9 games, it eliminates one of your non-conference games. Like, you're not getting rid of the Clemson game, and you're not getting rid of the game that you have to play against a Power 4 opponent. You're more likely than not getting rid of, like, let's say it was this year, for instance, you're getting rid of either Coastal Carolina or more likely South Carolina State that you would play here early on in the season. So you get rid of one of those, as people would call them, cupcake games, and you fill it in with an SEC opponent. And that gives you a chance to play. I know South Carolina fans have, talked about it for a little bit now, that they'd like to see, South Carolina play Georgia or Tennessee, one of the teams, Florida, one of the teams that they used to play a lot before the schedule kind of got changed around a little bit to where it's no longer divisions. It's just the one big conference of 16 teams. And yeah, I kind of agree. I think it would be cool, even though, let's be honest, South Carolina hasn't always had the best luck against those teams I just mentioned, like Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida. But it would add another layer to your schedule to where it's like, okay, you're not playing a cupcake opponent, and it only helps your strength of schedule playing more quality teams in the SEC.
Well, I guess I buried the lead. And the reason for this is for more money, right?
Yes.
Okay, we got to get that out of the way. The reason why we're going to add an extra game is because ESPN has basically come to the SEC and said, look, we have a bag of money if you can get us some more quality television product.
Oh yeah, totally. And the other thing is, I mean, the SEC, you mentioned the TV stuff now with ESPN and stuff, it's no longer SEC on CBS. It's been like that since last year. This is the second year they're doing it now, to where ABC and ESPN have the TV contract with the SEC. And typically early in the season, you're putting a lot of these non-conference games on. But if you add the 9th SEC game, you have the opportunity for more conference games on television and stuff. And I mean, look, the SEC on ABC is going to get its money's worth regardless, but this just adds another extra layer of potential money to be made if you're looking at it from a business standpoint.
So here's where I'm torn, Jack, because traditionally on our best times, us as a South Carolina program, we're traditionally in the 6 to 8 win range, right? A lot of those and some of those wins would be coming against non-con teams to get us 2 bowls. However, based on last year and based on the new expectations, we have expectations of moving forward and getting into the conversations about playoffs where you start talking about strength of schedule and things of that matter. So I'm torn as somebody who really counted on these non-con games to get us over the humps, or somebody who, looking towards the future, feels as if the strength of schedule may help us as we have conversations about the playoffs moving forward. How should I think about this?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right to feel like you should take strength of schedule into account. But obviously, going off of the playoff last year, strength of schedule wasn't the most important thing that seemingly mattered when the committee was deciding, okay, what teams are getting in. And to be honest, like, the criteria is so vague as to, what really does matter. And the committee changes, I think, every year. And it just leads to a lot of different factors that you have to take into account. And strength of schedule should be at the top of the list, because if you're playing a hard schedule and let's say you lose like 2 close games, like if you're South Carolina, you lost to LSU last year, and then you lost to Alabama in 2 close games, and then you have the loss to Ole Miss. But other than that, you have a very good season, and you get kind of, docked down because you lost 3 games and Your strength of schedule is good, but it didn't seem like that really mattered. So if I understand it, like you want the easier games on your schedule, like the SC State and the Coastal Carolina, and I don't know if we call Virginia Tech an easy game, because I think that could always be a tricky one, especially at a neutral site. But it does help having those games on your schedule. At the same time, though, you're playing an SEC schedule with 9 games. That's a lot more opportunity to beef up your resume and say you have quality wins over, like, hey, if you beat Georgia one season, that's a top win right there that you can really lean back on. And that may indeed help in case you were to go 9-3, because, last year a 3-loss at-large bid team did not make it, so South Carolina was not in there. If that were the case, like, let's say 2 years from now in 2026, they're a 3-loss team, but they have an extra quality win over a team like Georgia. That would help a ton in terms of getting into the playoff.
Okay, now, here's the second part of this question. Because you talked about, obviously, strength of schedule not maybe mattering as much as it should have to the committee this past year. With this movement to a potential 9-game schedule, do they look at, quote-unquote, balancing the schedules, where you're looking at strength of schedule within the conference? Because I think that was some of the conversation that was also had this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And if from an SEC standpoint and a business standpoint, you're trying to get the most teams into the playoff as possible. Now, we're not at a juncture in the playoff system yet, which I think we'll get to eventually, where you see automatic bids for the big conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten getting 3-4 guaranteed bids into the playoff format, whether it expands or not. But for right now, I think from the standpoint of the SEC, if they do move to a non-9-game schedule and it still remains at a 12-team playoff, you're probably balancing it out to where you want to get the right pairings. Like you put South Carolina up against, I mentioned the Georgias, the Tennessees, and the Floridas. Well, what if you put them up against, I'm trying to think of other teams here that are more balanced, but teams that are more so on their level. Like you put the top teams against the top teams, and then the middle of the pack teams against the middle of the pack teams, and maybe that ends up leading to getting an extra team in potentially. But you also could just go for it from the standpoint of putting Alabama against I know they lost to Vanderbilt last year, but Vanderbilt kind of like one of those teams that's not so high on the totem pole in the SEC.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting conundrum that the SEC is going to have to try and figure out, because obviously you want the goals to get more teams in, but then you select as far as you don't want to be eating your own. You want to be eating your tail when you're essentially eliminating teams through playing these weekly regular season games. But again, it all comes down to ESPN saying, "Hey, man, we got a lot of money for you. Figure something out so that we can make a more viable product." Last thing on the scheduling part, do you have a preference for how this would possibly go?
I do like the idea of playing a ninth conference game, because let's be honest, like South Carolina and all these other teams do not need to be playing the local in-state team. Like, it's cool for the team from like the FCS level or whatever, and they're getting paid a lot of money to come here. Like if you're Akron last year or SC State this year, it's a cool opportunity. But like we know the big team is going to win. So it's cool and all, but I think having the ninth conference game is a lot more appealing to the general college football fan, keeps them more enticed because it's going to be a good game, and it adds a lot more excitement to the league. And I think this is something that's been talked about for a while now. And me personally, I would like to see it come to fruition here eventually. And as for who Carolina could like play and stuff, again, I think I would like to see them play one of the teams that has been on their schedule for decades now, but wasn't last year. Like, again, the Georgia, Tennessee, Florida conundrum, like those teams not being on the schedule last year was a little bit different. And I know it's going to change every few years here with the schedule, but it's just weird to see those teams not on the schedule. So one of them filling in that ninth game would, I think, probably be optimal.
Yeah, my brother's a Georgia Bulldog fan, so we didn't get a chance to stoke up that rivalry last year. So we did miss that opportunity. Jack, all right, man, this reminds me of my time when I was teaching. I had to cover class for a little while. Nobody threw any chairs. Nobody got into any fights. We kept it on the road. Jack, I appreciate you. I think the real teacher is here, so I'm going to go ahead and leave and get out of here. But this has been Press and Thorn. Again, if you're just tuning in, on from 6 to 9. in the morning. Catch us, me and Bill Gunner and I. Jack, appreciate you. Appreciate this time. This is The Extra Point.
What we're talking about so far, Gamecock Baseball, Gamecock Softball, SEC, possibly, finally, getting to a 9-game schedule. And now we're going to talk about a possible Gamecock starting quarterback, Jack Veltri.
Yeah.
In New Orleans. What about that? Jack Veltri with us, Gamecock Central, as we roll through the extra point. Spencer Rattler is now competing for the starting gig in New Orleans, Jack Veltri.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see that over the weekend here, Terry, with Derek Carr retiring, and a little bit surprising there. But, with the injuries and whatnot, I mean, look, Derek Carr's, I was listening to the radio this morning, like Derek Carr's made more money than any of us will ever have in our lifetime. So he's going to be well off for the future. And so it makes sense at this point in his life that he's dealing with injuries and whatnot to retire. And that opens the door for the potential of a Spencer Rattler starting for the Saints next season. And he's got some starting experience from last year. And look, he was on a very, very bad Saints team. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be one that is potentially worse this season. No offensive line, no receiver help, no offense to really go work with. And maybe that'll improve a little bit this year, but it does not seem likely. But yeah, he's going to be right in the middle of a pretty big quarterback competition with himself. You got Tyler Shaw, who was drafted in the second round by the Saints in the NFL draft. And then you got Jake Haener, who I feel like he's brought into this conversation, but like he's kind of just thrown in there just because, even though he has played a little bit, though it hasn't been anything too impressive. But I think this is probably, we talk about Tyler Shaw a lot here, with him being the main guy to look for in this competition, just at least on a national standpoint, people talking about him. But I think Rattler is kind of getting a little bit, he's flying a little bit under the radar in this competition. I think he's someone to definitely keep an eye on. It would not shock me if he's the week 1 starter for New Orleans.
I'm with you about Haener. Look, God love you, Jake. You can collect a lot of money in life being a backup quarterback in the NFL. Jake Haener is not a starter. Unless something changes drastically, Jack, and Jake Haener's ability from what we've seen until, I don't know, coming up. Haener, I agree with you. Just throw his name in to be nice. You really do. I wouldn't be surprised either if we see Spencer Rattler taking snaps first week of the season. Here's the other part about it too, Jack. Remember, when Rattler started last year, the Saints were beat up, banged up, a ton of injuries on the offense. The team had gone on the crapper. I mean, he was lucky to get out of those games with, like, his arms not severed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just it was crazy to think about because, he's coming off the year at South Carolina where he gets sacked like 40-something times. And it's just like, I mean, you thought it couldn't get much worse than that. And you're going to have an NFL offensive line. You're going to have some playmakers with Alvin Kamara and some other guys in that offense. But, I mean, it was rough. I mean, the numbers were not great, but for what it's worth, I mean, he completed 57% of his passes. He had 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in the time that he was out there on the field starting for the Saints. And look, the one thing I've always seen, just again bringing it up from people trying to make sense of why it just wasn't the best year for him last year, is the fact that he just didn't have any help. And is he going to have much more help this year? I don't know. I mean, obviously the Saints went out and drafted Kelvin Banks with their first-round draft pick this year. And you have Alvin Kamara and you have some targets, but this Saints team's not going to be very good. And I almost think of it from the standpoint of this. Your quarterback room is pretty much a bunch of no names in there. And yes, obviously we know Spencer Rattler, but on a national standpoint, this quarterback room is just not very good. And so if you're the Saints, are you kind of looking at it like tanking a little bit, trying to get the first pick, and then let's say there's an Arch Manning available in next year's NFL draft? Are you kind of looking at that as the future, or are you trying to actually see what you have with this quarterback room? I mean, you took Tyler Shaw in the second round, and you drafted Spencer Rattler a season ago. I mean, are you kind of trying to figure out what you have with the future here, or are you playing towards getting that number 1 pick?
Look, our boy Tyler was taken, third round, I believe.
I think he was a second round.
Second round. Look, I'm with you on this. The Saints looked at the quarterback situation in this year's draft. They had the opportunity to, everybody thought, they might take Shedeur Sanders in the top 10. Well, that sounds funny now, doesn't it, Jack? So they didn't take a quarterback till the second round when they got our boy Tyler from Louisville. I think they look at this. This is my guess, and I wasn't in the war room. I think they go, okay, we'll take this dude in the second round. He's got arm talent. He's got physical ability, but he also has some holes in his game. We'll take him, see how he's looking this year in development and blah, blah, blah. But if we stink and we have another top 10 pick, this quarterback draft is much better in 2026 than 2025. And if we really stink and get the first overall pick, we'll get a better graded quarterback than you would have got this year. So yes, I'm not going to argue with you. I think, but it doesn't have a ring to it, Jack. Tank for Arch. It just doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good. And I think if you're the Saints, you could potentially make it work to where it's like, you had Archie Manning, back in the early 70s when you drafted him. And, those Saints teams were really bad. And I think we're probably going to see something a lot similar this year with what the Saints look like. Look, it's not like they have to be incredible this year. They could probably win 8 games in the NFC South and probably win that division. But are they going to? Probably not. And you look at the draft class next year in terms of quarterbacks, because you mentioned the quarterbacks in next year's draft, if they all go, would actually be so much better. You have Cade Klubnik. You have Lenoris Sellers potentially. That could be something to keep an eye on. And then you have guys like Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller. And potentially Arch Manning if he were to have a good season with Texas and declare for the draft. So a lot of options to look at. And I think you probably are looking ahead to the future and trying to see what you can get next year, because regardless of whoever's starting for the Saints this year at quarterback, it probably won't make too much of a difference because that's only one part of a team, and the team in general just is not going to be very good this year. And they probably will have a top 5 pick to where it's like, if quarterback play isn't off the charts, you're probably looking at taking one of the guys I just mentioned in next year's draft.
And we'll flip it back to Spencer Rattler. Look, Spencer Rattler, we saw it here. Spencer Rattler can spin it. Spencer Rattler's got arm talent. He's got an NFL-grade arm. It's just, can he do some of the other things that are required to do as a starting quarterback? And some of the things come out of college. Remember, Jack, it was, how he maneuvers the pocket when there's pressure. Sometimes when there is pressure, he can make throws he wants to take back, or he'll look down and not look down the field when he's breaking out of the pocket. There are little things that we saw with Rattler with the Saints that we saw in college, but he really shouldn't have been starting. Remember, Carr gets hurt, all hell breaks loose. He really shouldn't have been playing. So we'll see Spencer Rattler go into year 2, hopefully more poised, more polished. He's gotten some experience. He's got a chance to have NFL reps for a full year in practice and in games. And to what you said, we could see Spencer Rattler start, and if Rattler can play well enough, who knows what could happen for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, look, all it takes is one really good season that leads to maybe like a Pro Bowl or something. Like, look at what happened with Sam Darnold this year with the Vikings. And I know it's a different situation. That's a much better team we're talking about that made the playoffs, but trying to make sense of it, he had such a good year and made it to a Pro Bowl, got the Vikings to the postseason when J.J. McCarthy went down with his injury, and now he's signed to a big deal with the Seahawks. So I'm not saying that's going to be the same thing here necessarily with Spencer, but it's an opportunity that if he wins the starting job out of camp, he could potentially, if he has a good season, he could be earning himself a job, maybe not just with the Saints, but other teams that need a quarterback for the future, and they don't have the draft capital to go get one early in the first round like the Saints probably will. You look at that and like, okay, you could probably find a trade partner there and get him on a team where he could be a quarterback of the future if it's not with the Saints. But for this season, it's a real opportunity for him to go out there, win the job, have a good year, and be a potential starter of the future.
And real quick on Derek Carr. Now, look, a lot of people think Derek Carr is terrible. I don't think Derek Carr is terrible. Derek Carr is okay. He spent most of his career being okay. And Derek Carr made a ton of money for just being okay. Think about it, Jack. The only guy that made more money without being what we think of as wow is Kirk Cousins. Derek Carr's number 2 on that list of, well, you know what? He wasn't really what you call an A-level guy, but God, did he make a lot of money. Derek Carr got paid.
For being a second-round pick, I mean, he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He was in the league for, what,
11 years,
seasons?
I think, right?
That's from 2014 to 2024. That's pretty good. Look, you can call him a bust all you want or whatever. The fact that he only made the playoffs once, and his only playoff game, I think, was against the Bengals the year they went to the Super Bowl. So obviously, in that sense, not great. But then again, he was playing on some pretty awful teams. I mean, he was with the Raiders for the longest time, and then he was with the Saints for the last 2 years. But the man made so much money that he will be just fine. And look, he seems like such a good dude too. So look, he's winning at life. He's doing all right, and he's retiring at 34 years old. So it's probably the right decision for his future, just because with injuries and stuff, I mean, those things could easily add up.
I always thought he got a bit of a bad rap. I always thought Derek Carr was fine. He just wasn't like, a Hall of Famer, but he wasn't a bum. I always thought that was I never thought that was fair. All right, we'll jump back in here with Jack. NBA playoffs. It's been weird. It's interesting. It's kind of unpredictable. We'll talk about that next here on the Extra Point. Terry Ford hanging in for Tyler. Jack Voucher from Gamecock Central's here. We go up until 10 on the game. extra point. Terry Ford hanging in for Tyler. Jack, he's off in like Nashville or something, man. Unmute yourself, Jack. You're muted. Unmute yourself. There
yes.
you go.
Thank you. I'm not used to all this
technology.
Gosh.
Oh, come on. You're under 30, dude. You should be able to do this like in your sleep.
I should. But yeah, man, look, he's probably living his best life right now, having such a fun time out in Nashville. So hopefully he has a nice week off. But yes, so selfish of him to take a vacation during the middle of the year, right?
How dare he? How dare he? He's missing all the fun of, talking about Gamecock Baseball.
Yeah, he's missing a lot right now, but at least there's other things going on in the world that are not as bad as Gamecock Baseball, like the NBA playoffs are pretty good, right?
Isn't it weird? If you would have said coming into these series that the Cavaliers would be on the brink of elimination, the Celtics would be down 2-1, losing the first two games of their series at home to the Knicks, and you would say that Oklahoma City had to win an ugly slobber knocker last night not to fall down 3-1. Think about it, Jack. We were really close to having the two top seeds in each conference down 3-1, and we could have the defending champs down 3-1 after tonight.
Yeah, and that's also without mentioning, Golden State is down Steph Curry right now, and that's a huge loss when you're talking about going up against a team like the Timberwolves, who are up 2-1 in the series right now. But as we know, they're a very dangerous group that almost made the NBA Finals last year. But what a weird playoff it's been so far in this second round here in the semifinals. I mean, Cleveland got, the score does not indicate how much of a gap there was in that game, with the Pacers winning 129-109 yesterday to move up 3-1 in the series. But I mean, this was a 41-point game at halftime, Terry. And we're talking about the number one overall seed that won 60-plus games in the regular season. And yes, that does not mean much when you get into the playoffs. But again, they were coming off a series where they slashed. That's probably not the best word, but trying to think of a word to describe how bad that series was for the Heat, blowing them out in every single game. And, for Cleveland here to get boat raced in a second quarter there, 42-16, and be down by that much at halftime. I mean, that's kind of embarrassing.
Think about it too, Jack. I wonder, and again, we have no proof, the fact that Cleveland smacked Miami so hard and it was so easy, I wonder if they kind of walked into this series with Indiana going, we got this. You see how many wins we had? You see what we did to Miami? We got this. And Indiana, offensively, except for Game 3, Indiana has just worked Cleveland. And Cleveland's a good defensive team, and the Pacers have just run all over them.
And they've just been the Pacers have been one of the best teams in basketball since the new year started. I believe they're like 40-15 since the start of 2025, which is just crazy to think about. And look, Cleveland's been the best team in the East all year long. Like, the record has indicated it, but they're now in a 3-1 hole where, and keep in mind, they have a banged-up Donovan Mitchell that if he's not out there on the floor, I mean, this Cleveland team is still good, but, I mean, they are so much better when they have their best player on the floor out there with them. So it's going to be an uphill battle from here. There's no more room for margin for error. It really should be a 2-2 series if they hadn't blown one of those games at home in Cleveland. But you're in a big hole, and the Pacers are, they're one step closer to getting to the Eastern Conference Finals.
How funny would it be if you had an Indiana-New York Knicks Eastern Conference Final? Now, I think Boston's going to come back and win this thing, but what if they don't? Then you get the Knicks and the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh, that'd be something. Like, I mean, look, the Knicks really do need to win tonight to, I think, have the best chance possible to win this series. If you're up 3-1 on Boston, all you got to do is win one more game, and you go back to TD Garden for Game 5. I mean, look, you took the first two games in Boston. It's very, very much possible you could win this series in 5 games if you're able to win tonight. But I think the Celtics were able to wake themselves back up in Game 3. They've taken so many threes, obviously, and that could potentially be part of their downfall if they have some off games like they had in those first two. But, I mean, this is a huge game tonight. The winner of this game, I feel like probably has the best chance to win the series moving forward. I mean, the Celtics desperately need this one, but if you're the Knicks and you're trying to get to places that you haven't been in, feels like since the 90s, I mean, this is the time is tonight to go out here and get a win.
Knick fans make me laugh. They do. You know, they act like that they have as many banners as the Celtics and the Lakers, right? They just make me laugh, Knick fans. You haven't won a championship in like, what, 50 years? Over 50
Since
years?
The 70s.
Yeah, Red Holtzman was the head coach. Walt Frazier was your shooting guard. I mean, ready, even better. Bill Bradley was your small forward. He was a congressman for like 30 years.
My gosh.
Yeah, that's how long it's been since you won a championship. But Knicks fans act like, you know, they're right up there with the Celtics and the Lakers. It always makes me laugh.
No. I mean, in terms of historicness and stuff, sure, we could say that. But in terms of championships, absolutely not. But the Knicks, basketball is better when the Knicks are good. I will definitely say that.
Well, you get more celebrities when the Knicks are good.
Yeah.
When the Knicks stink, it's only Spike Lee. When the Knicks stink.
Oh, my gosh. Spike Lee. Poor Spike.
He suffered. All right, so I feel like before it's all said and done with this thing, that I still think Boston gets it straightened out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. It wouldn't shock me at all. Obviously, Indiana, I just can't see Cleveland being able to win 3 straight the way they've been playing and the way the Pacers have been playing. I think Oklahoma City will survive. If Steph Curry doesn't come back, Golden State doesn't have a chance. They got to get Steph back.
Absolutely.
Let's go doomsday real quick. You could conceivably see Minnesota and Denver in the Western Conference Final, and New York and Indiana in the Eastern Conference Final, and the NBA will be doing everything they can to get New York in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. Again, it's been crazy so far, and I could definitely see a scenario where the Knicks are potentially going to the finals, but they got to beat the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think this is the toughest, but also most interesting semifinals matchup we have on hand the rest of the way.
All right, man, we'll do this again tomorrow, brother. So
right, man,
be ready.
it.
All right, we'll see you, Jack. I'll try to be on time. I'll work on being on time.
That sounds good.
All right, we appreciate you. It's Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central. We'll do this again tomorrow with Jack on the Extra Point. We'll continue the Extra Point. Our buddy Sam Shapiro from WIS-TV is going to come hang out with us next here on the Halftime Show on the Game. And don't forget also, we got baseball tomorrow against Winthrop, 6:15 pregame, 6:30 first pitch right here on the Game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. Then Thursday, Friday, Saturday against LSU. 6:45 start times Thursday, Friday for the pregame, 2:45 pregame start up on Saturday. Final series of the season for Gamecock Baseball.
This just in, AAA Heating and Air continues to dominate the Midlands with the best HVAC replacement options around. With guaranteed financing, 12 months, no payment or interest, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty, they're setting the standard for new system installations. But did you know they also have great deals on repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're short on cash, AAA Heating and Air can still help. They offer up to 12-month payment plans with no credit check required on repairs. So all you need is a valid bank account. So don't delay. Call AAA Heating and Air today. Whether it's a replacement or repair, they've got the deal that you need.
We keep the extra point rolling. Terry Ford in for Tyler, hanging out. Sam Shapiro is here from WIS. How you doing, man? Good weekend?
Oh, yeah. Just another weekend in paradise. It's a little sloppy with the weather, covering some rain out there, or covering news, but yeah, definitely made for a wet weekend.
All right, so tough weekend, South Carolina baseball-wise. Another 6th time they've been swept this year. If they don't get a win over LSU, if they don't sweep LSU, they will set a record for the worst SEC conference mark in school history. And it's been tough, Sam. It's been a rough way to go, man. And you know when it's like this, and I say this, between noon and 3 when I'm more awake, I say this. It's like, look, when you've had a season this bad, it splatters on everybody. It's not one department. It's not just the pitchers. It's not just the offense. It's not just the defense. It's not just the players. It's not just the coaches. It's everybody. The ball boys, blame them too. It's been rough. It really has been.
I mean, anytime you're giving up 20 runs in 2 games over less than a week-long stretch or 7-day stretch, it's usually not a great recipe for disaster. Actually, South Carolina has given up 15 or more runs in a single game only 12 times in the last 25 years, and 4 of those instances have occurred this season alone. So when you're looking at it like that, it's kind of looking like how the rain did this weekend, a little bit sloppy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been, we can sit here and go, wow, the pitching's been terrible this year. That's the problem. No, the offense is near the bottom of the SEC too. And there's been games this year the defense has let them down. And there's been games that, strategy's been questioned and things of that nature. It's just been, there's some talk about a disconnect with coaches and players and all these other things. It's going to be, look, you got to get through the last 3 games with LSU, then you go to the SEC tournament, and then some real decisions have to be made moving forward of what you're going to do, how this plays out to make sure this doesn't ever happen again.
Well, they got to get these 3 SEC conference wins against LSU. That's a no-brainer. If they don't, then it's one of the worst. I think it might be the worst finish in SEC conference history if they don't get all 3 wins against LSU. But I just think that, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, disconnect or not, this was also Coach Maneri's kind of first season getting his feet wet with this team. And, he'd kind of said he had misread kind of the lay of the land a little bit. So I think, you can make serious changes, if this kind of becomes a common thread, 2 or 3 seasons down the line. But, it's taken a lot of, I think, coaches with various, Carolina programs, a couple seasons to get their feet wet before they've kind of, really developed, some of the programs into some of the more powerful juggernauts we've seen, throughout the athletics department.
Here's the thing, and this is what's going to be interesting about this. Which direction does this go when this season is done? Because, this is Coach Maneri's first season back. He's been out 3 years. And he's gotten a year to get the lay of the land. He's even said last time he was on with Jay and Elijah, he said, I've got a chance to see the SEC now. You need power hitting and you need pitchers who throw hard, basically. So he's talked about seeing the first year of the SEC. But is because this season has been so bad, historically bad, and this is not the athletic director who hired you. What happens with all that? Or does, Donati say, look, first year, had to get feet back under him, had to get to see the SEC, we'll roll it out one more year, and it might not be the most popular decision in the world, but that's what we're going to do. Because there are people that, are not down with what happened, obviously. It's a proud tradition and a proud program, and what happened this year, it just, you talk to people who have been following Gamecock baseball their whole life, Sam, they're like, this can't happen again. This does not happen. So which direction does it go is going to be interesting to watch in this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious. I think it wouldn't be the best thing in the world to kind of tear everything down right away because, we've only seen one season so far. And a lot of these, big games, especially with Florida and Auburn, over the last week, kind of got away too at the end of the game. So I definitely think that there's a lot of room to grow, but if that growing doesn't happen soon, you're going to have a lot of impatient people getting very upset, wanting to see some changes getting made early. And Maneri even said, this is going to take more time than I kind of initially kind of built up in the first place. I think he kind of gave this... I think he kind of made people feel more like he was going to take this program straight to Omaha, coming in right out of the gate. And it's not always, smooth sailing that way. And I think he's very aware of some of the kinks that need to be worked out for this team to, get there in the coming years. But, the standard that's been set by this program now is, winning. So getting there people might not want to wait as long as he's expecting to take. But I think that the common vision is there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of folks, because again, Mark Kingston had worn out his welcome with this fan base. They had no hope that Kingston would get this program to Omaha. And when the change was made, there were fans going, oh, you got a guy that's been to Omaha with two different programs, took Notre Dame, took LSU, now we got a coach. So now we'll see what happens. This thing will get better. It'll get back on the right track. It'll step up a level. And it's fallen like 10 levels this year. And I think most people didn't see this coming. I think that's what also makes it worse, Sam, is the shock of a season like this when you have a Hall of Fame head coach or a Hall of Fame type head coach in Paul Maneri. Very few people, nobody saw this. Forget few people, nobody saw this coming.
Yeah, and Terry, when you have a Hall of Fame coach like that with over 1,500 career wins on your team, and your team has given up 24 runs in a game. I mean, I've in my lifetime, I've seen very few baseball games where a team has scored 20 runs, or there's even been 20 runs combined. This game actually on Thursday was their worst loss since 1997. The one that was worse than that was when they lost to Arkansas by 23 runs. In 1997, 30-7, which I didn't even know you could score 30 runs in a baseball game either. But
I tell you, you're getting a lot of this year, Sam. Worse since then. Never happened before, and none of it's good stuff. So, like I said, we'll see where everything goes. You've got 4 more regular season games. You got the SEC tournament. And then, the guy that matters, the athletic director, will take a step back, assess where it's at, see what they want to do moving forward. We'll find out. I say they shouldn't sink the ship. Yep. Tuesday, tomorrow against Winthrop, 6:15 pregame, 6:30 first pitch at 107.5 the Game in Columbia, and also 100.3 our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. Good news, Sam. Ashley Chastain Woodard's first year as a South Carolina softball coach takes the Gamecocks to the NCAA tournament. They'll be the 8th seed, which means if they get through the region, they'll host the Super. So, and they don't play any SEC. There's no SEC teams in their brackets before they would get to possibly Oklahoma City. So, to be an 8th seed, a nice setup for the Gamecocks moving forward in softball, but a really good first year.
Absolutely. I think that this is going to be a good postseason for them, too. They've showed that in and out of conference, they're a team that's deserving to be there and ready to compete. They've got 17 top 25 wins, and then 6 of those wins were out of conference. So conference or not, I don't think it's going to make a matchup. I think they're going to make a pretty good run.
And, the cool thing about this, again, how the transfer portal can be your buddy. Chastain Woodard brought like 6 players with her from Charlotte, and some of those players have been impact players for this team. Brought in 9 transfers overall. I believe that's the most in the country. But, this was not like a terrible program before she took over. It was all right. It was solid. It felt like, you needed to get some new life in there in the coaching office. But here's the thing about it, too. Where you're at right now as a fan, I'm not going to tell people what to do. You think for yourself, do what you want. But you've had a rough road baseball-wise this year. And if you're not really into softball, that's okay. You can be now. Nothing wrong with jumping on the bandwagon, baby.
I'm jumping on that bandwagon, too. I want to see them go all the way to the College World Series and hopefully bring home a natty.
Because if you're a fan, nobody likes misery. Nobody digs misery. Everybody likes a winner. Nothing wrong with going, hey, softball team's in the NCAAs. They're an 8 seed. I think I'm gonna start paying attention to that a little bit. I'm gonna start watching some of those games. I'm gonna learn some softball rules.
It's still a winning Gamecock roster on the diamond. Mm-hmm. Can't be mad with winning.
Nothing wrong with discovering softball. I'll tell you a real quick story. We back in high school when I played baseball, and obviously I played at such a high level that I'm standing here talking to you. We're walking off the field practice one day, and the girls softball team is there finishing up a practice too or whatever. And so, again, we're goofs. And, the pitcher just finished up throwing with the catcher, and she's coming up the mound. And we're like, hey, let us swing a bat. Let's swing a bat against you. And she's like, all right, sure. I still haven't seen it. It's different, man. She's throwing risers. They're closer. Ball's going up instead of coming across or going down. I think I fouled off, too.
It might be the angle at which they're throwing, but, I mean, there's heat. Baseball, softball, it doesn't matter. They're throwing heat either way.
It's tough, man. And it's coming from that different angle, and it ain't easy to hit. I mean, my buddy and I walked away going, back to baseball. Just get back to baseball where it's easier.
You guys weren't ready for the underhand.
Yes, that was later. That's after my failed baseball career ended, and I do what every failed baseball player does: beer league softball. Beer league softball. All right, so we're hanging out with our buddy Sam Shapiro from WIS. We will jump back in here. Could Spencer Rattler be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints?
He might be.
We can discuss that coming back here on the Extra Point. Do not forget we have Carolina baseball, not just tomorrow night against Winthrop, but the LSU series is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 6:45 p.m. Pregame for Thursday and Friday, 2:45 Saturday. And yes, the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway is still going on. If a Gamecock batter hits a home run, a Grand Slam, you can win cash. Pot goes up $25 every game. Right now, $525. Go to 1075game.com to register. We'll come back. Spencer Rattler. Could he be quarterback of the New Orleans Saints? It's a very interesting topic of conversation. We'll get to it next here on not the halftime show. I knew I was going to do it. It's the Extra Point. Terry Ford hanging for Tyler. Sam Shapiro is here from WIS TV. We go to 11 on the game. Extra point. Terry Ford hanging in for Tyler as he takes a week off. He wants to use his vacation time. Quite annoyed. Starting to question his loyalty. Tyler's going to hang out in Nashville. I'm quite jealous because I've never been to Nashville. It's a bucket list place for me to go. I really want to go hang in Nashville. Haven't been there yet. So I told Tyler, bring me a T-shirt or a beer mug, or steal a beer mug from a bar and bring it to me.
Or at least a mug in the shape of a boot, like a cowboy boot.
Exactly. Give me something Nashville-y.
Or go to Hard Rock.
Yeah, I want something. Or better yet, I'm sure somebody will be passed out somewhere in an alley. Just steal their boot and bring it to me.
Or take one of those selfies with them in the background.
Sure. Yeah. Just give me something good. Give me something good from Nashville. So Tyler will be back with us on Monday. He'll be hanging. All right, so, and we talked a bit about this with Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central last hour, but if you haven't heard, David Carr has retired. You're like, who cares, there? He plays for the Saints. No, I don't care. Well, if David Carr is not quarterbacking the Saints, that means someone needs to. And that someone could be Spencer Rattler before it's all said and done. The quarterback room, you have Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, and our boy Tyler from Louisville. And I almost feel like, I think it's funny how his name is pronounced 50 different ways. The whole draft day, they're Tyler Shuck. Now I'm hearing it even said different. So I'm calling him our boy Tyler from Louisville. Second round pick. Could he win the job? Sure. Could Jake Haener win the job? No. I think Jake Haener's a backup quarterback. I just don't think he's a starter. Could Spencer Rattler win the job? Yeah. Rattler's got an NFL arm. Started last year when he shouldn't have been starting. The Saints they got a little bit of weaponry. I mean, Chris Olave, when healthy, is an excellent wide receiver. They've got Alvin Kamara, when healthy, is a really good back. They've had some offensive line troubles, but we'll see with Kellen Moore as the new head coach. Look, it would not stun me at all, Sam, if you saw Spencer Rattler taking snaps week 1 for the New Orleans Saints.
Me neither. I think he would be, I think given last year having to work through some of those kinks, I mean, granted, in all 5 matchups he played in last year, he lost. And he only turned the ball over. Well, he turned the ball over 3 times in those 5 games. Only two of those 5 games he actually turned the ball over in the air. But he was also taking a lot of sacks last year. So I think sometimes a year can literally just be the difference. And maybe that player we saw in Carolina, maybe could come out this year. Maybe he'll have that fire under his butt, knowing that he's actually fighting for a starting job. And if he doesn't get it this time, he might have to go somewhere else to potentially make it as a first string starting quarterback. But I think that I would not be surprised to see him suiting up week 1 as a starter.
I mean, when you look at those 3 guys, it would not surprise me at all if Rattler wins the gig. I mean, look, Rattler's got an NFL gun. He's got a cannon. He can make every NFL throw. So arm talent's not an issue. And last year he got some experience when he shouldn't have been playing. That could hopefully go a long way this year. He's had a full year in the league to learn how to prepare like a pro and to work on some of his deficiencies. And between Haener and our boy Tyler and Spencer Rattler, I think Rattler can absolutely win the job. Now, obviously, you need to go out and play well enough to where at the end of the season, they think you could be their guy. So if you're Spencer Rattler and you do win the job, obviously it's going to be an audition every week because where you were picked, that's held against you automatically. It just is. You got to prove yourself twice as much as a first-round pick or a premium round pick. When you're picked on the 3rd day, you got to do even more. You don't get the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people are looking at you about what you can't do. And if you could do 7 straight things right, Sam, and then throw an interception, what are they going to say? Yeah, see? So if you're Spencer Rattler, you have to go above and beyond to show the Saints that if you do get the starting gig, that you're the guy.
It's essentially like the job interview after you get the job. Now that you have the job as an NFL quarterback, now you got to interview why you should be the starter. Our boy Tyler isn't necessarily proven as a pro quarterback yet. We've seen him all throughout this year kind of proven himself. He had a great season, 23 scores in the air, 6 picks, throwing 4 touchdowns and having a great game against, big teams like Miami in the ACC. I know a lot of people slander on them just because of, Florida State and whatnot. But, teams, I feel like in the NFL especially, have been making mistakes in the recent years, rushing players that, maybe need a year or two to clearly develop. Sam Darnold's a great example. Jordan Love, I think it was a great example. The Packers being patient with him. Just teams making mistakes, rushing players that aren't necessarily developed coming out of the gate. Now, granted, there are examples where players literally get thrown in and they're great, Jaden Daniels being that last year. But I think that it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world if the Saints benched our boy Tyler and gave Rattler the nod just to start out, even if he, is not coming out looking like that poised quarterback, just because Rattler has had some experience taking snaps, and he could flip the script coming in this year. But then if he's not, then you play, our boy Tyler's experiment.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But Spencer Rattler's going to get a heck of an opportunity to be the starting quarterback in New Orleans. And with Carr retiring, it's an interesting 11-year career. I think Carr was better than a lot of folks want to give him credit. A lot of people, he's terrible. I don't think Carr was ever terrible. I always thought he was an average to above average quarterback. Not great, but I thought he was, again, played for some bad teams, man. Really did play for some bad teams. It feels like that's the guy, Sam, and we see this from time to time, and the ironic part was, we talk about Arch Manning, and could he have a great year and be the number 1 pick overall? And then he goes to New Orleans if New Orleans tanks. Archie Manning never played for a winner. Bounced around the NFL a couple different stops, never played for a winner, always went through losing. Some guys, for some reason, the football gods just squat on him. And Carr was one, only a couple times in the playoffs. He came to New Orleans when they were just blah. The Raiders, every time Carr walked in, there was a new head coach. Carr, to be fair, never was in a great spot, ever.
But I do agree with you that he was definitely, a talented player. I think he's I was trying to find the stat just now, but I think is one of the only quarterbacks to have 10,000 career yards and no playoff win. It was something along the lines of that.
Yeah, he was stuck in bad situations. It just, a lot of times it depends on where you land as a quarterback. I always say this, put Patrick Mahomes in Carolina with those kooks. Patrick Mahomes doesn't walk around with Super Bowl rings and looking like, people with the GOAT conversations and, Hall of Fame stuff. And, a lot of it depends on where you go. Patrick Mahomes landed with Andy Reid, got to sit out almost a whole year because Kansas City had Alex Smith. Patient front office, patient ownership. People who knew how to build a team around a quarterback. This is what gets me, Sam. The blueprint's in front of you. What Kansas City did with Mahomes. Now, obviously, Mahomes is a massively talented human being, but forget that for a minute. The blueprint of getting to sit behind a veteran quarterback who's going to teach you, playing with a head coach who is an offensive guru, being with an organization whose front office understands they have to build around you and build pieces to make you better. Kansas City's the blueprint on how to do this, but nobody stops and looks at it. They just keep screwing it up.
And I think it also helped. Kansas City had a pretty solidified offensive line. They had Mitchell Schwartz, I think, on the left tackle as they were kind of, working out Mahomes to be, the quarterback he is now. But, like I was saying before, a lot of teams, I think, rush the ball on this initiative. They draft this rookie quarterback. They need success right now. They don't want to give them that year to, sit back and kind of, watch the show or melting pot, whatever team you're kind of getting thrown into. And then, they're not really letting them get a chance to really develop. I think Jared Goff is also a good example that he also kind of got thrown into an interesting example with the Rams. I mean, he ended up developing over time, but he wasn't, the quarterback he is on Detroit now. That rookie season he was playing with the Rams.
Well, he got stuck with maybe the worst quarterback head coach ever in Jeff Fisher. I mean, he's lucky that Sean McVay came in and saved him. And then he went to Detroit, where he's dealt with Ben Johnson. And, Detroit knew how to, again, build around a quarterback with that running game and that offensive line and those receivers and doing things that Goff can do and not asking him to do things he can't do. The blueprint is there. And just like, it's ego, a lot of it's ego, a lot of it's we got to get that quarterback on the field because he's in that rookie deal and we're paying him nothing and we got to start that clock as fast as possible. And a lot of times teams just make mistakes. Not every quarterback is built to be Jalen Daniels. Jalen Daniels is, again,
anomaly.
Yes. C.J. Stroud. But you saw C.J. Stroud regressed in year 2 also. So I just saw something as I was trolling the internet during the break. Pablo Torre, Sam, is a very interesting take on Bill Belichick. Pablo Torre says he wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick never coaches the North Carolina Tar Heels. We'll get into it next. It's the Extra Point. Sam Shapiro from WIS is here. Terry Ford hanging in for Tyler as we roll this baby up until 11. Then Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on the game. All right, extra point. Sam Shapiro from WIS, who's always here, is here. Tyler Head, who's usually always here, decided he wanted a vacation. Just bring me back something. I just want something. Bring me back something nice. Not even something nice. Bring me back something. I don't care if it's nice or not. I forget I'm saying this. I was in Chicago for 3 days. I didn't get him anything.
That wasn't nice of you.
Yeah. I did remember the girlfriend and my kids. I did remember that. By the way, Chicago's bleeping expensive, man.
I believe it. At any city now, inflation is crazy. That was just back in New York in March, and it was like $12 for 3 slices of pizza.
I went to the same thing I went to last week in Chicago. I went to last year in New York, and it wasn't as expensive in New York as it was this year in Chicago. It was crazy in Chicago. I'll give you a quick story. So, I want to grab I was going to go out and get something to eat with some buds of mine, right? And so I was like, I just want to eat something real fast, just something to munch on before I go eat in about 3 hours. So they have one of these little grab-and-go things, this little setup. It was a Starbucks or whatever. So I go up, and I grab, a nutrition bar, and I grab a sweet tea, a little small, a little normal-sized sweet tea. Not a big one, but just normal-sized sweet tea. Set it up there, and a woman goes, that'll be $10.99. I was like, nutrition bar, is that expensive? She goes, no, that sweet tea is $7.50. I'm not going to lie to you. I licked every drop out of the inside of that thing for $7.50, Sam. It was insane.
You must have thought you were in the airport.
That's what it felt like. It did. It felt like airport prices. It was crazy. So anyway, Tyler will be back next week. Jumping back on board here on the Extra Point. All right. So during the break, I saw this. I thought it was quite interesting. Headline, Pablo Torre. And Pablo Torre does podcasts for The Ringer. And he has a podcast out about Bill Belichick and the girlfriend Jordan Hudson and people around Belichick who are giving comments about what they think about this whole thing. Are they concerned? What's happening? So Pablo Torre, I want to hear this podcast too because that sounds very interesting. Well, Pablo Torre has doubled down on the Belichick thing, saying that in his mind, he thinks there's a real chance that Belichick never coaches the Tar Heels. It's because of Jordan Hudson. Remember, she has been now banned from the facility at North Carolina. Now, Pablo Torre was telling Dominique Foxworth this on Dominique Foxworth's show. Torre feels like because of this Hudson situation, North Carolina might get nervous and want to move on from Bill. And you're thinking, well, how can they do that? They're giving him $10 million a year. Yes, they are until June 1st. There's a buyout in Belichick's contract starting on the 1st of June where it only cost him $1 million to get out of the contract. Everybody thought that was put in so Bill could try to get back to the NFL. I kept saying, Sam, that's not the way the NFL calendar works. By June, all the gigs are taken. To me, I thought it was put in because if Bill was around college football for X amount of time, he'd go, you know what? This ain't for me. I'm out. Here's $1 million. Because Bill has $1 million and, sitting around his glove compartment, right? But now the script can be flipped because that $1 million buyout, North Carolina might say on June 1st, all this is pretty kooky. We're not feeling real confident about you and your quote-unquote muse. We're going to give you your $1 million and we'll figure it out. I mean, that's what Pablo Torre he's saying could happen.
I mean, the beer money, the $1 million is beer money for both of them at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't really think that's the concern, but it could have been in place for a scenario maybe like this if they found out, all right, this is too much, we got to move on. Maybe this is what it's exactly in place for, but I don't know, as somebody that personally does not like Bill Belichick at all, I can't see this being the dagger in whatever he wants to do with UNC. But if it's a continued problem that he's not going to necessarily push away, I could definitely see this buyout more of being his first-round exit, so to speak.
Yeah, you feel like this has got to be really bad for them to cut the check. And then you're right, the money's nothing. But it's the idea you brought in the guy who was looked at as the greatest head coach in the history of the NFL. you did a lot of stuff to get this guy on your campus. Like, the AD didn't hire him. Bubba Cunningham didn't hire him. Higher-ups hired Bill Belichick. You did a lot to put Bill Belichick in the coaching chair at North Carolina. So if you write $1 million check on June 1st or somewhere near that to have him go away, this thing has got to be, like, really concerning, right?
There's just supposed to be more going on, I guess, in shop that is just making people unbelievably, unbearably uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just the stoic person that Belichick is, or if how he runs his shop, at a pro level is different than how maybe a college shop would run it. And now, he's bringing in said girlfriend. Whenever you bring in a girlfriend like that, and, you're in a position like he is, there's no positive out of that.
And again, look, Bill Belichick isn't the first dude in his 70s to hook up with a girl. Let me rephrase that. Bill Belichick isn't the first really rich guy in his 70s to hook up with a girl in her 20s, right? But there's a few things here. One, when your girlfriend's as old as some of your players, it's a little weird. Two, if there are things going on here where she is meddling in things that shouldn't be meddled in, and Bill is not handling his business the way it's expected to be handled, and people think it's because of this situation with this girlfriend, and it becomes so troubling that the university writes $1 million check for Bill not to coach, because that throws you sideways, right? Now you need an interim head coach. Or what are you going to do, go chase a head coach somewhere else on June 1st? I mean, I don't think this happens. I just don't. But if it did, man, that would tell you something, wouldn't it?
Literally. And it's also a new relationship. Like, she's coming in going, I want to be involved, blah, 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 blah. Like, Bill Belichick is a professional that has been doing this for, decades and decades, and kind of inserting yourself into, I guess a new stint in your career could also, it's not really going to be beneficial for either of you. Like, it's not going to help her case in any way, shape, or form, but it's not going to kind of help him at least drive the boat there.
It's funny. I had a buddy of mine say this about this whole situation. It's like, why is Bill putting himself through all this? It's like, he's got tons of money. He's got all those NFL rings. He's got nothing to prove to anybody. And I said, he's a ball coach. That's who Bill Belichick is. He's a ball coach. He wants to coach ball. He doesn't want to be on TV. He doesn't want to do podcasts. He wants to coach ball. So that's why he's coming back, and nobody in the NFL wanted to give him a gig. Let's just be honest. Nobody in the NFL wanted him to be their head coach. And we've gone over the reasons. He wants to run and control everything. That's great when you're winning Super Bowls, but when you hit the crapper after you lose your quarterback and you only make the playoffs once, and the last 2 years were bad, and you were making some really weird, questionable decisions, people go, no, Bill, we're good. So then you go to college, and again, your personal life's your personal life. But when you make your personal life public, and all these things are coming out, and there's all these rumors of concern about you, are you being hypnotized, and the joke is blink twice and we'll save you. It's weird, man. It's weird, Sam.
If I were him, I would not be making any of that public. That's just me, though.
Yeah, see, I would be, my private life's my private life. That's me. And I don't think, honestly, I think it's more her than him, which also leads you to, if you're Bill, aren't you controlling your relationship? It kind of looks like he's not, right? I think that's a concern from the outside. We don't know what's going on. Bill might be loving every second of this and laughing, but it almost comes off like he's being controlled. And she's kind of running the show, and she's dragging him around. And at North Carolina, your thought is, well, is that going to impact his ability to coach the football team at the level we want him to? So I think Belichick coaches the Tar Heels, but if Pablo Torre's right, that would tell you a lot. It just really would.
Yeah, I think Belichick at least is safe for this year, but I think if his girlfriend starts calling some audibles or running some defensive schemes, it might be a little different. You sitting there with the headset on, Sam,
you got the problem? All right, NBA playoffs, they're kooky. We'll talk about it with Sam next here on the Extra Point. Terry Ford sitting in for Tyler on the game. Extra Point, final segment. Sam Shapiro's with us. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour coming up with Wes and Chris. Then the halftime show, or some dude named Terry Ford will be back, along with our buddy David Dare. All right, Sam, so we see the NBA playoffs have been, most of the time, the NBA playoffs are pretty cut and dry, right? Very rarely do you have underdogs. Every now and then somebody wins a series and you go, wow, didn't see that coming. But think about this, man. Right now as we speak, the two top seeds in both conferences are in danger of getting knocked out in the second round. And the defending champion could get knocked out in the second round.
I was calling it before this started. I was saying both one seeds were looking like they could be frauds, maybe a semifinal round exit. I don't know, just something about Cleveland and OKC. I was not, I definitely didn't see them like for sure punching tickets to the finals, maybe getting that Eastern Conference berth, but these semifinal series are looking a little shaky. I mean, Thunder are up against, a team that did just come off winning a championship 2 years ago.
Yep.
And Cleveland, is playing last year's defending champs who, Peyton Pritchard has been unbelievable for the Celtics.
How about that guy? That guy in Game 3 went nuts. The interesting thing about Oklahoma City, real quick, they're the 1 seed. And your first thought's this. Okay, well, if they can beat the Denver Nuggets, who have won a championship a few years ago, arguably the best player in the NBA in Jokic, championship medal, veterans. If you get past them, you should make it to the finals because Minnesota should beat Golden State if there's no Steph Curry. Now, if Steph Curry comes back, that could get interesting. But let's say Minnesota moves on. We forget something. Who played Dallas in the Western Conference Finals last year?
Minnesota.
So Minnesota's got some metal going deep into the playoffs too, and they've got a dude in Anthony Edwards who's a bucket getter.
Oh, he's a bad man.
And they've got some other guys that are interesting pieces on that team as well. So it's not an automatic ticket puncher. If you get past Denver and you're Oklahoma City, you could lose to Minnesota too. So Oklahoma City, nowhere near an easy road to get to the finals, even if they were the best team in the West.
Yeah, Edwards to me is like Dwayne Wade with a 3-ball, like just absolute slasher, strong, great shot creator, but like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league this year. Didn't he lead the league?
Yeah, he led the league.
And he's 23?
Yeah.
Scary. Even, what was it, game 1, game 2, he tweaked his left ankle, and they didn't know if he was going to come back, and then he came back in the second half, and then they ended up, winning that game. But helps when you're young. And even in the last matchup, he had a terrible first half, still finished the game with 38 points.
Yep.
He just needs one good half to get going. But once he's going, he's a very, very confident player. And there's a difference between confident and cocky, and he's right on that line. But I think he's like so perfectly on that line of like, I just know what I can do. And he's played with some of the best in the game already, especially this summer. So if Minnesota gets the opportunity to go to the finals, that could be really, really, really scary. But it's all going to depend if Curry's healthy. If Curry's not healthy, I don't think Buddy Hield and Jimmy Butler are going to get it done.
Nah, God love playoff Jimmy. Playoff Jimmy can't do it alone. The way the Golden State Warriors are constructed, you need Butler and Curry. Missing either one of them, you don't advance. So, in the East, look, what Indiana has done to Cleveland in 3 of these 4 games has been unreal. First of all, Indiana, if you look at Indiana's record since, January, they've been one of the best teams in the NBA. They actually decided to start playing defense, which is something they haven't done up until now.
Which is crazy because they have Miles Turner, but...
they're locked in, they're playing phenomenal, and just Cleveland's gotten run over. That game 4 yesterday, Cleveland, it looked like they just got a bunch of dudes together at the Y, so you guys want to go play a game against the Pacers?
Yeah.
That was insane. And look, when you're getting your tail kicked, everyone says, well, you look like you're not prepared. But Cleveland down 2-1, knowing you've got to win game 4, at least be competitive. and you just got curb stomped from the get-go. Anything you've seen in these first 4 games makes you think Cleveland's going to win 3 straight?
Probably not.
No.
I mean, the baffling thing to me is the tale of 2 seasons for Tyrese Haliburton. I mean, in the beginning of the year, I think the first 7, 8 games, he was only scoring 2 or 3 baskets. He wasn't even scoring in double figures. I saw some stat, I think through the first couple months of the season, he was only finishing like 10% with shots that were like closer to the rim. But, now you flip the script in January, and it, like you were saying, they actually are playing defense. You have rim protectors like Miles Turner stepping up. They have a slew of guards in the backcourt. Nimhart's a great guy that's kind of come through for them. So I turned the game on last night in the middle of the third quarter, and I was baffled to see them up 20-plus points. I mean, this Cavs team has Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Mr. Clutch Time. He's been averaging 40 points a game in this series. Like, the fact that he tweaked his ankle last night, to me, was like so they're done. They're totally done. Like, I don't know what necessarily more Cleveland needs to do besides let Indiana kind of run away with it, because in the first 2 games especially, they had huge leads on Indiana, like major leads. And we've seen in multiple instances where Indiana's kind of just closed that gap, because not even necessarily that they're playing bad defense, they just can't convert. They'll let 3 or 4 possessions go without scoring the ball. And if you're letting Indiana score every trip they're taking back and you're not going to score, there goes your 8-point lead. There goes then that's how 25-point leads turn into, 16-point leads when you're giving up multiple 8, 12-point runs.
Well, I think a lot of the tone of the series was set in game 1. Remember, Cleveland came back and tied that game. I believe they even took the lead late. And Indiana kept making clutch hoop after clutch hoop after clutch hoop. And some of those things were insane. Nebhart hit one from the parking lot. And I felt like when Indiana withstood that barrage from Cleveland in Cleveland and won that game, they got the puffy chest after that.
Well, the Knicks will have fun rebirthing a rivalry from way back when they face them in the Eastern Conference Finals.
If they do. You mean if. Sam, good hanging out with you, bud.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
You have a good one. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour next with Chris and Wes on the game.
All right, welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark. No Tyler Head today, so we got Terry back there. We're all just trying to keep this train on the tracks. We'll see what happens. He's smiling right now, so hopefully this is going out over the air. Hopefully y'all are doing well and staying dry. Monday show here, GC Takeover. Chris, let's start with softball, man. We've given this program, we've given this team, I feel like a lot of attention this year, rightfully so. And they get the big news last night. We knew they were locked to get in. We knew they were locked to host a regional. The final question was, had they done enough to be that also important top 8 national seed, that super regional host if you win, if you take care of business during the first week? And they got the news they were looking for. We knew it was going to be close. We knew it was going to be tight. They are the number 8 seed, the first time in program history, modern program history anyway, that they are a top 8 national seed. And, man, first of all, job's not done, obviously. But you do, I think, have to take at least a quick moment to just throw out all the kudos in the world for not just Ashley Chastain Woodard. She's obviously done a fantastic job, but sometimes it gets lost. That entire staff, man, they've just come in and I would say modernized the approach for South Carolina softball.
Yeah, I mean, we knew they were coming in kind of on the line, right? We were going over that before the weekend. Thought South Carolina had a chance to get in there. And I was going to use sneak in is not the right word. It's earn, right? But we knew they were on the line. They weren't going to be the number 1 seed. If they got in, it was probably going to be 8. And they did it, right? And amazing that they have done what they have done in the toughest league in the country. And if you're, most people around here that are listening, I'm sure most of them are SEC fans and recognize the strength of the conference. But if you are an SEC hater, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. 7 of the top 8 are from the SEC, including the 2 that just came into the conference. Oklahoma as the number 2 seed. Texas coming in, the only non-SEC team in that top 8. Florida State, who's having a great season at 46-9. So a tremendous year. And, I mean, you're right, man. There's been certainly some success in the past of this softball program. They've had pockets of strong seasons, strong moments. But Ashley Chastain Woodard's come in and done a great job of just, you look at the roster, right, how she's constructed the roster, very smart, bringing back players, key players like Brooke Blankenship and others, bringing in transfers from Charlotte where she was before, bringing in, a Quincy Lilio, and putting it all together. And I like the word you use, modernizing the approach to where after you play Oklahoma on the road, their legendary head coach is giving your team kudos and talking about how hard you are to play, not just because of your talent, right, but because of how you play the game and how that's a difficult matchup. So they've been a tough out all year, even for teams that have managed some wins against them. They've only lost 15 games all year, of course. And again, this is an extremely difficult schedule that they've played. It's an extremely difficult league. So it's been amazing to watch it. And we've been doing this show for a while. We haven't talked a ton of softball over the years. And the fact that we've been devoting so much time to it just speaks to the job that they've done in year one.
Well, and I think the fan base is interested at this point, and we have people on our forums there. Hey, what's the recruiting class look like? What is the transfer portal going to look like for South Carolina this offseason? So I do think, as with anything, when you start to kind of build some momentum, and some of that is obviously, a lot of that is winning. But, when you get out in the community, when you kind of bring some excitement and some momentum into everything about the program, people start to take interest. And I think softball as a whole is growing as a game, college softball specifically. Maybe somewhat like women's basketball started to take off. Obviously, it's not at that point yet, but started to take off a number of years ago and find some of that momentum. So South Carolina finding what they are right now, I think at a really, really good time for this sport in general. So if you want to go out to the games this weekend, the Columbia Regional, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if you're a baseball fan, it's very much like that format. 4 teams at a home regional. Then you have that super regional. If you win the regional, you advance to that super regional, and then that's best of 3. And then if you win the super, of course, you go to the women's softball College World Series, much like you go to Omaha with the final 8 teams in baseball. So pretty much the same structure there. South Carolina will be hosting North Florida, Virginia, and Elon in their 4-team sort of mini tournament, if you will, double elimination for that regional. Gamecocks will begin 5:30 ESPN Plus this Friday versus Elon, which is, of course, the 4 seed within kind of the confines of that regional. And so, Chris, I think not only 7 of 8 of your top 8 seeds are from the SEC, but then 8 of 10 of your kind of top 10 overall. And we knew, well, from what we were hearing, it was going to come down to South Carolina, LSU, UCLA, in some order, 8, 9, 10. It ended up being just that. South Carolina getting the 8, UCLA the 9, and LSU the 10. Got to think the fact that South Carolina does have a head-to-head series win over LSU was impactful there. The fact that if you go through the resume for Carolina, dude, they had a few games that got away from them in terms of the scoreboard, but if you look at what the committee said and just some stuff we were hearing leading into the announcement for the brackets, all those quad 1 wins, but then you look at the other end of it, your quad 3 and your quad 4 games, 0 losses in those games.
Yeah.
So yeah, you had a couple of games like on the scoreboard, maybe you lost by a certain amount, but in terms of like true bad losses where you would say you just got beat by a team you absolutely should not get beat by, 0 of those, which I think in year 1 with a roster that kind of, we know it was just kind of, I would say, stitched together, where you're talking about these girls returned. This big group came in from Charlotte, transfers from other places, a couple of freshmen playing, and it just all came together. But to not have those letdowns, to not have those kind of bad losses, obviously, I think is just as impressive as what they were able to do in terms of getting those quad 1 wins.
No, it's a great point. And, I mean, you look at some of the series that they've played this year, you know, you might find in some of those series, you know, LSU game, they lose that game 11-3 in 5 innings, but then they go, you know, win the series. You know, they have some other losses where maybe the score is a little bit more lopsided, but then they go and win the series. And here's something to think about going forward. You know, this team's been obviously excellent at home. They're 31-5 at home. So, first of all, you are, and not to, look, every team in the NCAA tournament, for the most part, is going to be a pretty good team, you know, especially when you get past, like, the 4 seeds. You get up into the 2 seeds, the 3 seeds. There's going to be, I think, some parity there, probably. But Carolina's battle-tested, and they've won some big series against some really good opponents, you know, like an LSU on the road. But they're playing at home where they've been really good, 31-5. You have, and not to diminish, again, those other teams, but you have, in some ways, a step back in competition. This isn't, hey, you're just hosting 3 other SEC teams in your regional. You're not. So you like the path there, and then you like the fact that you earn that top 8 seed. That means you're home for a super if you can advance. You're paired with UCLA, who got the 9 seed. And again, I go back to the fact you've been really, really good at home, 31-5. Your losses are to Coastal, another tournament team, in a midweek game. You lost a game to Georgia, but you won that series. You lost a game to Texas Tech. You won that series. You know, and you can kind of go through. Ole Miss, you won that series. You lost the game by 1 run. So they've just been really, really good at home. And that's why I think getting this top 8 seed, again, you got to take care of business in the first round, but that gives you a path.
Well, that line between the 8 and the 9 with this format, it's always going to be big, and you're going to be splitting hairs with how that year's committee decides to kind of reward, hey, here's the 8, here's the 9. Most years, it's probably going to be pretty close. This year, I think 8, 9, and 10 were all relatively close. Whether you get like the 7 or the 8 seed, not sure it matters a whole lot. But whether you get the 8 or the 9 for South Carolina is the difference in playing here in Columbia, where you have only lost 5 games, versus if you hadn't gotten the 8, you'd be traveling to Los Angeles. Like, you know, for that's an undertaking really for any team, but for softball, where it's much more, at least for most conferences, especially for the SEC, much more of a regional thing. Just having to travel to the other side of the country and go out there and play, and it's going to be a tough place to play anyway. I mean, I don't even know if you can put in, like, you can't really overstate how big of a deal that is, that you're able to stay home versus having to do all that traveling when maybe you're not quite even used to going coast to coast as a college softball program.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, UCLA, the other side of that, they're sitting there going, God, we just lost out on this top 8 seed. Now we're looking at traveling, right? And traveling, again, across the coast, just in reverse, going from West Coast to East Coast. That's a tough deal for them, Now, the one thing about, and we are getting ahead of ourselves, UCLA's done some traveling this year for softball. They've gone and actually played some SEC teams in Florida, earlier this year. They went and played like kind of I guess you could call it like a mini tournament in Florida. But they've been to, because of the Big Ten, they've been to Maryland. Like, they've been over to this side. So could that help them a little bit? Maybe, but they'd love to be playing in Los Angeles right now, just like South Carolina's going to be enjoying playing at Beckham if they can advance. So best possible outcome for South Carolina, given the circumstances where, you're kind of right on the line. They make it in, and they fully earned it. I mean, I don't think anybody's sitting around thinking this is a controversial pick, because you look at the season they've had, it's been a really, really good one.
Yeah, while we obviously are enjoying talking about softball, we also have to talk about the other side. We have to talk about baseball. 2 programs with coaches in year 1, and obviously, frankly, 2 programs that just right now, 2 teams that are in completely different spots. And also, later on in the show, we're going to be joined by Cade Crenshaw, who does some play-by-play on the radio for both baseball and softball. He's going to join us around 11:30 to talk about both of those programs. When we come back, Chris and I will talk about that Auburn series. Unfortunately for Carolina, another just similar week like we've seen the last few weeks. But we still got to talk about it, and we'll do so coming off the other side. He's Chris. I'm Wes. This is Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on the Game. All right, guys, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Wes Mitchell here. Chris Clark hanging out. Guys, unfortunately, we got to talk about some baseball here. And, Chris, unfortunately, the conversation is much the same as it was last week. And, you talk about coming off of a situation where you are just completely overall dominated by your opponent and just not being able to match up. Another sweep, this time at the hands of Auburn. And, man, so I know we had a conversation last Thursday or Friday, and it was kind of along the lines, has this group just given up on the season? And, we were talking about the pitching. We were talking about, obviously, the lack of run support as well. And, I did watch the doubleheaders on Saturday. It's all run together. Friday doubleheaders. And South Carolina put up some runs. They played well. They battled back. They had a lead. They lost the lead. They tied it up. And I think in baseball, this is a sport where you can maybe sometimes confuse lack of production at the plate for, they've quit.
Yes.
They don't care anymore. And I did not see a team, especially in terms of just the position players, I did not see a team that has quit. When they are scoring, you look at the dugout, you've got Ethan Petrie, who, if anybody maybe would be given a slight pass for looking ahead a little bit to the next step in his career, he's over there waving the towel like they're doing sandstorm at Williams-Brice Stadium.
I remember the exact moment you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, again, you gave your pitchers some run support in this game. And so I don't think it's necessarily fair for anybody or for us to say or even hint that maybe they've quit. But also, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. That is that after giving up, what did we say? It was 54, wasn't it 54-5 combined the week before, or 54-3?
456, yeah. I mean, just in the 50s.
You turn around, and you basically have an equally poor overall performance specifically in terms of just not being able to stop your opponent. Even the game that you were right there, really honestly should have won, in my opinion, but you did not do the little things right in game 2 overall, which was game 1 of the doubleheader. Turn around and you kind of bookend that with 2 blowouts. So I say all that to say I don't know what that means. I don't think overall they've quit. Most competitors, when they go out there, are going to try in between the lines. That's just what you do as competitors. But we cannot ignore the amount of runs that this group is giving up right now in SEC play.
Well, and to the extent that they find some run support in a game, it's something else that fails. So you just mentioned the bookend blowouts. I mean, game 1 overall, the Thursday game, the single game, was 24-2. So nothing goes right in that game, and that was not overall like we've seen other blowouts this season, of course, right? So that's not just that's baseball type thing. Like we've seen, maybe not 24-2, but we've seen it. Game 3, you only put up 3 runs, you give up 11. It's game 2 where, and we've seen this too, you get some run support, but something else fails. Maybe it's defense that's on the whole uncharacteristic from a certain player. But the pitching, I remember at the beginning of the year, Wes, we came into this thing with some valid concerns and questions, I think fair questions about the pitching. And through the first part of the season, we were kind of going, again, before they got into conference play, before they'd played Clemson, even a little bit after they played Clemson, we're going, this pitching staff, maybe it's better overall than we thought it were going to be. There's some great tests lying ahead in SEC play. Well, we have our answer now. It has not gone well. So it's just, man, it's hard to put into words because, again, when they find some run support, something else fails. Defensive lapses, pitching problems, kind of you name it, right? And we saw another painful way to lose a game. I mean, Auburn has a walk-off bunt to bring a run home. And you just kind of add that to the list of, like, here's another way things have gone wrong, and here's another way that a game that you actually did have in reach ended and didn't go your way.
Well, you once again, my point, though, is you once again gave up 11 runs. So you hit that game, but the pitching was still a massive issue.
You gave up 24, 11, and 11. Like, you're not going to win a series doing that.
Yeah, the last 5 games, this is according to Jack, pitching has surrendered 74 runs. So, like, I don't know if I've ever seen. I certainly haven't seen it at South Carolina. I don't have to look it up to know that that's a record at South Carolina. Right. I don't have to look at a single
not a good thing
stat to know that that's got to be a record. But I don't know if I've seen that anywhere. Maybe it's happened, but it's just I don't know. And even just that game, it's the little things too. There was a situation where you have a ball thrown. It's the little things in baseball a lot of times, and I would almost guarantee, because Maneri came out to the mound right after this, and he looked ticked. And if you have a situation where there's a runner on second and there's a base hit and the ball gets thrown home, and if the ball is hit to the left fielder, the third baseman is supposed to be there to be the cutoff man. And then the runner who got the hit is able to take second because the guy in left field throws home and there's nobody there to cut it off. And so that runner should be at first, and instead they're at second. Those are the little things that even when you score 10 runs and have 17 hits, that you lose the game. Same game you get, and I'm all for aggressiveness, so I don't really fault this entirely, but you get a guy thrown out at home with, I think, nobody out. Again, I'm all for aggressiveness, but in games where you lose by 1, you're always going to look back at that decision. And then even at the end, Auburn has a great call on with the safety squeeze. Really, the only way to combat that is one, the guy has to help you out a little bit. He has to just miss it and not have a great bunt, or you have to anticipate it and basically pitch out. But if there was no play at home, but why is your pitcher turning to first when the winning run is scoring? You weren't throwing him out at home, but why? So there's no reason on the planet your pitcher should be looking that I'm aware of. Somebody text us on the Firehouse Subs line and tell me if there is, but so it's just the little things, and the little things become really, really big things. So anyway, all right, we're going to talk to Cade Crenshaw, who's going to talk to us about softball. We're going to combine the 2 first segments. He's going to talk some baseball and some softball with us on the other side. He's Chris, I'm Wes. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour.
If you want to make your home smarter, reach out to our friends over at Integrated Media. Michael, Nathan, the entire crew there do an amazing job with anything that you may need at your home from an audiovisual standpoint. They can do things as simple as just getting you a new TV. You don't have to go to the big box stores. You don't have to browse through endless options on the World Wide Web. You can just give them a call at 803-948-8327, and they can help you source the equipment and mount it. So everything from TV mounts, audio, video, TV installation, security and cameras, home theater, and complete smart home systems. Smart home systems are amazing. It's their specialty. You can control all your lights, devices, thermostats, everything in your home from a touch of a button, whether you're home or away. Integrated Media helps take your home and make it smarter. Again, integratedmediainc.com, or give their crew a call, 803-948-8327.
All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Joined now by a man who wears many hats. It's our guy, Cade Crenshaw, to talk some softball and some baseball. Cade, appreciate you hopping on, man. How you doing today?
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys. Doing well. Hoping this rain can hold off and we can actually play some baseball and softball this week.
Yeah, I know it's been rough out there. Hopefully, it does get on out of here for us later on in the week. And let's start with some positives, Cade. Top 8 national seed for Ashley Chastain Woodard and that entire South Carolina softball program over there. What a season. I know job not done, man. Like, there's a lot to still play for, but I do think it's worth taking a moment to just maybe reflect on what the regular season has been for them. I know you've been following it along the way. Just how about this group, man?
No doubt. It's been incredible what, Coach Chastain Woodard's been able to do in year one. I think we often use that buzzword of, foundation when it comes to starting a program and taking over a new job. You couldn't ask for a better foundation in year one than what this coaching staff has done. You get 40 wins. You play exceptionally well in the SEC. You get a winning record. You force your sports information department to rewrite a lot of the record books. They made that staffer's summer a lot more difficult of updating that record book, but that's always a good thing. So just incredible job what they've done. For a team that was picked to finish dead last in the SEC, I think they fared pretty well.
Cade, it's Chris. Thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate the time. So one of the things that Wes and I were talking about here at the beginning of the show was just the key distinction between getting in to the top 8 versus, a 9. And South Carolina came in kind of right on the line. I think a lot of the projections, like Softball America, kind of nailed it in that I think they had 7 of the top 8 being SEC teams. That ended up being the case. I think they had 8 of the top 10. That ended up being the case. So South Carolina's on the right side of that. Obviously, they got to take care of business in the regional, but just how big of an advantage do you think that is to have this more clear path to get to the Women's College World Series by being able to host a Super?
It's huge because I think we can all agree, there's some nice hotels in the world, but there's no bed you like sleeping in more than your own. And being at home just feels so much nicer. You're more comfortable. You know exactly where the sun's going to be at certain times of the day. You know how to play it. You know how balls skip off the dirt. And it's just that, just comfort level, I think, with it. Plus, how these teams schedule those early season round robins. They kind of play almost as like a regional type feel. You have 3, 4, 5 teams here in town. Everybody plays each other. You play a couple games in a row in a day. So, you get used to that and get used to that comfort level. But certainly, being at home has been huge for this team this year. When we talk about being 40-15 on the season, they're 31-5 at home. 31-5 at home. This is the group that's always taking care of business here at home. And I think, when it came to laying out what the regional field was going to look like and what push South Carolina over that, edge like you talked about of being the 8 seed versus the 9 seed and potentially being on the road for Supers was just how the rest of the field honestly shook out. I mean, we look back at the beginning of the season, and you can look at how the season shook out. We knew them getting a sweep on the road at Duke was going to be huge in terms of boosting your RPI and boosting your resume at the end of the season. We knew them taking a non-conference series against Texas Tech was going to be big. Well, Texas Tech goes on to win the Big 12. That helps you tremendously. But then on top of that, I think the thing we often overlook is Boston University won their league. South Carolina beat them twice. St. Francis won their league. South Carolina run-ruled them. So, you look at different areas and where South Carolina really lucked out at the beginning of the season where some of those teams that they brought in turned out to be really, really strong NCAA championship-level teams that have made the tournament. That certainly pushed them ahead.
Cade, I don't know if you've maybe had a chance to dive into the draw in terms of the regional, North Florida, Virginia, Elon yet, but maybe just throw some early thoughts at us on maybe how this thing just matches up for the Gamecocks this weekend.
Well, there's one team of those 3 that I certainly know very well. It's because South Carolina played them 95 days ago in Virginia, right? I mean, those are the first 2 games of the year. South Carolina walks them off to win both. The game 1 of the season they won on a walk-off bad throw to the plate. The second game they won in extras, a walk-off home run from Brooke Blankenship, first ever career out of the park homer. So you got those 2 wins against Virginia early on in the season. Virginia is a team that, worked their way through the ACC, had a strong season. They've won 37 games, won 14 in conference. That's a team that's really just stayed true to the identity that they've built for themselves over the last few years. And that's been also a program that's been building up over the last few seasons. Last year was their first NCAA tournament. They've now made it in back-to-back years. And their identity really is they're going to be aggressive on the base pass. Like, this is a group they've stolen 66 of 79 bases. Incredibly high success rate when they're running and being aggressive, but they also hit for power. I mean, there's not many teams in the country they'll find 60 bags and 60 homers, but that's what Virginia does. So certainly going to be fun to see these two teams match back up, and a lot can change in 95 days, but you're sure glad you didn't throw away that Sky report with them coming back into town. And then North Florida and Elon, two league winners. Now look at a North Florida team, 45 wins out of the A-Sun. Again, another team that's going to push you, right? 66 steals for North Florida, too. No pun intended, the Ospreys fly. That's what they do. But also they have a strong pitching staff. UNF, staff ERA of 235. Really, really strong for them in a good A-Sun league. And then for Elon out of the CAA, that's a group, a local, regionally based team. So oftentimes you look at maybe they've played some of the same teams, and they have. South Carolina and Elon share 3 common opponents this year. Elon went at Duke, at North Carolina, and at Clemson. They lost all 3, but you would expect that, obviously, with a mid-major against a power conference matchup. But it is unique to see, how you matched up against the same teams. But, again, Elon, a team that's going to push it. 52 steals. I think the biggest key for the weekend for me, no doubt, is going to be Lexi Winters behind the plate and the middle infielder, Carly Shelton and Brooke Blankenship, and how they're keeping teams at bay and not turning singles into doubles.
Cade, let's zoom out to the tournament as a whole. I think it stands to reason anyone in the top 8 and some right outside of it are going to have an opportunity, right? South Carolina's shown they can compete with anybody this year. They've beaten some of the country's best teams as well. Are there a few teams in your mind that, aside from South Carolina, might be the front runners for this thing? Obviously, like A&M's obvious as the top overall seed, but maybe a few schools that aren't getting as much attention that you feel like are going to have a chance to make some serious noise?
Certainly. So I think the big aid for South Carolina is they saw most of those teams that we would label as contenders this year. I mean, SEC takes 7 of the 8 national seeds and most of the regional hosts overall. But if there's like that dark horse team, and oftentimes you get lost in a team with how they handle themselves throughout the season. You see them early on, then you don't see them again. But I just go back to Texas Tech. I mean, this is a group that has the national reigning player of the year as their starting pitcher, Nigeria Canada. She was the Big 12 tournament MVP. It's a team that hits 1 through 9. Jerry Glasgow, an experienced head coach. He's been around doing this for a long time in his first year there. So I think Texas Tech, they've got that 12 seed, and they have a favorable region overall. They got the last team in, which was Washington. You've got Mississippi State for them and Brown. So I like Texas Tech to come out of that regional to begin with, and then most likely they'll go on the road to Tallahassee with Florida State. That's who they're matched up with. So I think Texas Tech can make a run in this thing. I mean, that's a team that played really well in the Big 12 tournament, won the tournament championship by shutting out Arizona. Nigeria Kennedy, I believe, allowed no runs in the entire tournament and struck out 26 batters in those 3 games. So I like the Red Raiders maybe to sneak their way into Oklahoma City.
Cade, we got about 2 minutes before we got a hard break here. Close us out by maybe giving us your key just for South Carolina to get to the World Series. What needs to happen?
Don't change anything, right? You've been doing what you've been doing all year, and that's kind of just believing that when nobody else believed in you. Like I said, this was a team that was picked dead last to finish in the SEC, and they've won 40 games. Winning isn't easy, and not many teams can win 40, but this group's done it. Just keep doing what they're doing. They've got a good core group together, and I think they're excited to continue making history here in year 1.
He is Cade Crenshaw. Cade, we appreciate you hopping on. As always, man, good stuff, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, again, he's Cade. He is Chris. I am Wes. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Game.
One of our great partners here on the game is the fine folks over at Game Day Men's Health. They help men reclaim their vitality by optimizing your hormone levels. So if you're struggling with fatigue, with muscle loss, with weight gain, want to get it checked out, reach out to our friends over at Game Day Men's Health, 115 Atrium Way. That's conveniently located in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and 2 Notch Road. They are different than the others. Same-day appointments for fast, convenient care. They have in-house labs, man cave-style clinic, complete with drinks and snacks, and they can give you results if you get your testosterone tested in just 15 minutes. No long-term contracts either. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, search for the location nearest you, which is, again, right off I-77 and 2 Notch Road, or give Game Day Men's Health a call, 803-265-3161.
All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, closing it out. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, hanging out here in the studio. Hopefully the rain is about to get out of here, but hope you're staying dry out there. Chris, let's close it out with a little football talk, man. When did the way too early top 25 followed by the post-spring top 20, has this always, like, have I just never paid attention? I feel like the post-transfer portal top 25, the just the incremental updates to the top 25, every time we have an excuse is a fairly new invention. Am I wrong?
No, I think it's definitely picked up steam lately, but it's all an effort to. I think we do it psychologically. It helps us like extend football season. You know, like you take the off season and you start talking about it. They come out early. Like, don't people do them like the day after the national title game? I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Or like while it's going on. Game's still going on. Here's the top
before.
25. Day before. Start doing them like 2 seasons in advance. But they are. I mean, and they are like they were tough in general. You know, like they're tough to do in the course of a regular season, but now, like you add in the transfer portal and 2 windows. You know, like you could do a day after the national title, 2 early top 25, and as long as you admit that it's too early, that's cool. People like to read it. The numbers show that. That's why people do them. People generally don't publish things that people don't read. So, like, if you complain, why are they covering the transfer portal? Because people read it. You know, same thing with these 2 early top 25s. But, you know, you put one out, you know, in January or, like, in December, you've still got the portal. You know, you put one out in December, like, you've got the spring portal. So, teams are a little bit more structured now in that most teams are either done or close to done, at least in the portal. So, maybe it's a better time to start talking about it a little bit more.
So, obviously, you're going to have differing opinions out there. But for the most part, Chris, South Carolina has, in most of these top 25s, kind of been inside that top 20, inside that top 15, but not quite, I would say, in the top 10. There were some, I think, especially right at the end of the season, where maybe they snuck into the top 10. ESPN has put out their updated post-spring too early top 25. And then over on 3, of course, where Gamecock Central is partnered, Ari has put out his post-spring top 25. And similar approaches here. Ari has South Carolina 14. ESPN has South Carolina 13. And it's interesting because I think South Carolina has maybe just all of a sudden been compared, it seems like in all these, to Illinois, who they just played in the bowl game. It seems like South Carolina and Illinois are right beside each other or very near each other in a lot of these. And then there just naturally has been this urge to compare Florida with Lagway and South Carolina, of course, with a Norris here in terms of who should be ahead of who. But I think anybody that has South Carolina in that 12, 13, 14, 15-ish range, I think that's a fairly fair assessment of where things are right now. Because, and I know you always as a fan want to be as high as possible, right? But I go back to the number of guys that were either drafted or signed, undrafted free agent, or got tryouts in the NFL, particularly from that defense. And the number of guys you're having to replace within not just the 11, but kind of that 22, or, maybe it's more like 18 and 19 guys that play on a regular basis in terms of your rotation. The number of guys they're replacing out of that group still does concern me. So, I'm staring at ESPN right now, 13th in the country. Fair or not?
I don't know if people get mad at me saying this. It might be too high, because, and I'll say that, look, Shane Beamer has pointed this out many times. After Carolina went 5-7 in 2023, the easy/lazy thing to do was to say, oh, they're 5-7, lost Rattler and Leggett, they'll be worse or the same. Shane Beamer and the coaches and the team, they're sitting there going, actually, we think we're going to be pretty good. And they were. You got the opposite now, where Shane Beamer has been very, cognizant of any signs of, complacency. Hey, we won 9 games last year, knocking on the door of the playoff. Great. Doesn't mean we'll do it this year. So I think it's kind of similar, right? And ESPN's not just throwing out random, hey, you did this last year, so we'll slot you at about the same spot this year, even though that's kind of where South Carolina is, right outside of a 12-team playoff with being at number 13. They are trying to factor in who'd you lose, who'd you get, who'd you keep from your current roster, from last season's roster. But, if South Carolina were lower, I also think that would be fair for the reasons you laid out. They lost a lot. They have some things to prove. Yes, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country coming back. They have one of the best edge players coming back in Dylan Stewart. They've got other very good players, but they lost a lot. Experience, leadership, production. The specialists, Wes, I think are not being discussed as much. You got to replace everybody there, from top to bottom. And so, look, here's the other thing. Once again, going to play a really tough schedule. Clemson, number 2 in this. You get to avoid Texas and Georgia, but you play LSU on the road, who, by the way, added 18 players from the transfer portal, most of whom were very highly ranked. You play Alabama, checking in at number 9. So if it was a little bit lower, I wouldn't be saying, oh, that's disrespectful. You put it in the proper context.
Josh Pate, I believe I saw, has Carolina 18.
Fair.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think we always we get into that echo chamber. If anybody this time last year would have said, I got South Carolina winning 9 games, you'd have been, oh, Homer, look at this idiot.
Yeah.
We get in and I feel like on a national standpoint too, the echo chamber is bouncing the words Penn State back and forth right now. All of a sudden, Penn State has been chosen as this
Anointed.
year's. Yeah, they're anointed. Don't anoint yet, but Penn State on both of these, ESPN and Ari, having Penn State number one. That's all we got time for today, though. He is Chris. I am Wes. Shout out again to Cade Crenshaw for joining us. We'll see y'all tomorrow. All right, folks, before we get out of here, let me tell you about our friends at Firehouse Subs. A well-timed ad read here because it is lunchtime. So go ahead, head on over to firehousesubs.com right now or pull up the Firehouse Subs app. I'm just going to assume you already have it downloaded because we've been telling you about it for years now. If you have it downloaded or if you don't, go ahead, download it, then put in your order, the Rapid Rescue to go. You're going to get points every single time you order. You can save your favorites, save your payment information, and then just efficiently have it waiting for you right there on the shelf for you. Whether you are ordering some of your all-time favorites like mine, the brisket add bacon, or Tyler's, the turkey bacon ranch, or if you want to try something new. You got 2 new hook and ladders, the zesty garlic hook and ladder or the spicy dill hook and ladder, both with hot sauce from Hot Ones. Again, as we always tell you, there are options for you. There are great options for you at Firehouse Subs. Go ahead, hit them up right now for your lunch. Firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app.